And I really want to thank you for taking the time to do this with me. I
Absolutely, man.
read the copy. Can you see me?
Yeah, it's not coming through right now, but
Okay. Hold up here. All right, can you see me now?
I see now.
All
Awesome.
right. I actually haven't had time to work with Skype to figure this all out. I just made sure it was working, but I'm
Gotcha.
through the whole Skype thing. So,
Okay.
guys,
No,
man, last month, I watched your big story video, and I was like so inspired. Of course, I watched it at like 1 in the morning, right before bed, and I hopped over the vlog, like not able to sleep. I gave you a message, and
yeah, totally. I remember.
we're actually getting to do this, man. This is so awesome.
For sure, man.
I just want to give you a little bit of background of myself before we get started, so we can kind of
Yep,
have some back and forth, if that's all right. I
for sure.
deal with like a lot of anxiety, chronic fatigue, and then some like severe injuries in my life that have really just kind of been big obstacles for me. So I'm hoping in
Right.
this interview we can kind of talk about like just overcoming personal obstacles
For
and
sure.
just how to get through those kind of things. And I thought like who would be better to do that? Like when I saw your video, I was like, man, this is so amazing. So
Love it, man.
anyway,
That works.
your book, No Excuses. I didn't realize how long ago you wrote this. I was like,
It's been a while. It's like
yeah.
ancient book world.
So what's changed since then? Anything?
Since the book came out,
Yeah.
man, what hasn't changed would be your question and answer, I think.
Yeah. Hey.
You know,
All your like your mindset and your beliefs and all that are those kind of the same?
no, I would say, how old are you?
I'm 23. I'm turning 24 in 2 months now.
Okay.
Oh,
I would say like the transition from being 20 to 30 is probably like the biggest, most growth transformative time I think of just about anybody's life, that you go through,
absolutely.
right? So, I mean,
Absolutely.
there was periods of, different change in sort of like spiritual perspectives, change in like sort of like belief priorities and what mattered.
Yeah.
And, I think in, career oriented things and, where I saw my future being like at that time, I mean, there's so many things are different. I mean, like even like like jujitsu was just sort of on my radar at that point in time, but that's been
Yeah.
a huge part of my life. And even the mountain climbing, like I was not at all on my radar. Being a
Yeah. Hey.
business owner was, barely in the background. So yeah, all that stuff is really changed a lot since the book came out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I did jujitsu for a year and did a little bit of wrestling and Muay Thai kickboxing. So we'll touch on that in the future. That's one of the things I really struggled with jujitsu when I found it. I was just like in love. I'm a bit of a smaller guy. I weigh about 150 pounds, but
Right.
being able to wrestle with bigger guys, man, I just saw it as an art and I fell in love. And that's actually what caused me to have my first injury. And I haven't been able to do it for like 3 years, and that was something really hard for me to deal with. Like when you find something that you're so into and you just can't do it anymore. So that's like one of the obstacles I've had to overcome. But moving on, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I wanted to ask you about your faith. I know when I was reading No Excuses, you were very religious and stuff, and that's something I've found in the last year or so. Last Christmas Eve, I went to church for the first time, and it's made
Awesome.
a significant impact in my life in the way I view worry and even feeling sorry for myself and all that kind of things.
Right.
I wanted to ask you how you still feel, if you still are really religious and all that. How has that made an impact in your life?
So I would say I'm absolutely a Christian in the sense that I'm a follower of Christ, but I'm really
Yeah.
like truthfully like 0% religious. I
Okay.
think, sort of it's a hard thing to explain, but, I
Yeah.
mean, basically grew up going to church intermittently and then, like, I think it was sort of a perfect representation of what I believed at 20 years old. And then through a period of like several years of like being fully disconnected from things of like full blown atheism and started to teach myself, biochemistry and different levels of science and in particular like evolution. And so I went through several years of being like, sort of almost like closet, atheist. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes, I'm more open with my friends, but then I think now what I've experienced is more of sort of like a reconciliation with that and really like fully appreciating like the message that Christ shared and the
Yeah,
love that he did share.
absolutely.
So it's like that's what I focus on more than the, you know, like the very specific like, details of things, right? That's where I
Okay,
think the
that's
disconnect
great.
is between me and a lot of other people. Is like
No,
I'm a lot less guy.
sorry to cut you off there. Sorry, man. That's awesome because that's totally how I feel too about it. For me, like I grew up in a very science oriented background and going through my own personal struggles and seeing my mom deal with clinical depression and kind of wondering why like bad things can happen to good people and stuff. I never really fully got on board with the idea of God and all that, but in following the teachings of Christ and just the more yeah, more like you said, the teaching of Christ and not so much the fully religious side of it. But even just the following of Christ has made a huge difference in my life, sorry. And I'm still not 100% religious, but I don't feel like I have to be to benefit from going to church. And like I don't even read the Bible very often, but when I do, I feel like a sense of peace and I feel like there's a sense of purpose to it, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I
So
continually
that's
go
kind
back
of
to it
one
myself.
that's
You know,
kind of one thing I'm trying to like tell people just about how much of a change it's made in my life and how you don't necessarily have to be head over heels into it for it to make a big impact in your life.
well, I think the difference between I love head over heels into things, and at the
Yeah.
same time, I think that anytime that you know what something is, you immediately place a limit and a constraint on it,
Yeah.
right? If you know I absolutely can't do this or I can do that or whatever, no matter what, or you know what something is, right? You know this historical event or you know that this whatever. Like for instance, to me, I don't know, not knowing actually is more open to discovery. I
Yeah.
think it's like just as funny to hear like people that are like, turn science into religion, where they're like, there is absolutely no for a fact there's no like God or, any type of intelligent design or anything to that effect. Because how do you know that? You don't have a freaking clue, right? We're
Yeah,
like
exactly.
little flatworms, and compared to like, in a dimensional sense, right? We can't even perceive other dimensions outside of our own. So therefore, it's
Yeah.
like, how do we even know, right? So it's like not knowing has become, and really embracing not knowing is a big part of my like spiritual experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if anyone claims to know everything or taking, say, word from the Bible as stone cold fact, I feel like we're limiting ourselves so much. Okay?
With anything, man, it's like that's also too. It's not just in a religious sense. If you look at like politically, right?
Hmm.
If you know this way is right and that way is wrong, and it's like, well, okay, it's all of our own internal maps, right? We all walk around with our maps and we relate to those maps like they're reality instead of realizing that they're just our own internal maps, and that some people have a different map based on their own unique sociology and their physiology, their biochemistry, their
Absolutely.
upbringing, all of it. So we all have our own different maps, but it's also too, you get in debate about, what's the best martial art, right? And somebody's like, I know jiu-jitsu is the best martial art, or I know taekwondo is the best martial art. No, you don't freaking know. There's
Yeah.
different situations. That's why MMA what is today, because it is this like wide array of all these different things, right?
Yeah.
And it's been like evolution in action.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to talk about something. Sorry, I just have a little bit of notes here, just so we don't stray too
Totally, man.
off topic. Just
No problem.
guys.
I'll keep at like until about 2:45 our time. So just to
Oh,
give you a heads up, but
yeah, no worries. I don't plan on keeping you longer than half an hour. I kind of knew. I talked to Joey, and once again, thanks to Joey for he's been excellent getting back to me and managing
that's
all that stuff. So
Joey's
really appreciate
best.
that from him.
He's
Um,
been friends since we were 11. So yeah, Joey's
yeah,
good,
that's
good
awesome.
peeps.
One thing I loved in your book was I won't say anything that gives anything away, but how you dealt with your losing streak in your initial year, and how you talked about how your family's core rules is never giving up on something that you started in the middle. And for me, that is just like so symbolic. And I feel like dealing with depression, anxiety, and all that stuff, I get very head on into something. And then as soon as I see signs of failure, I get discouraged and maybe unmotivated. And like say for my blog, for example, I feel like this is something I'm really passionate about and I see it as a really long-term project. But it's been slower getting it up and moving than I expected. And as soon as I kind of feel a little bit derailed, it's like, oh man, like what now? But when I started, I knew, okay, I gotta set a year, and that it's gonna be like a season of anything, right? I have to dedicate a whole year. So I'm around that 6 month mark now, and I'm kind of like in that self doubt stage. But when I read that, that was just like so awesome.
So what's been interesting in terms of like keeping you like more consistent with it?
Uh, it's just been therapeutic for me for so many reasons. Just getting
Sure.
that's out onto the
I
page,
get that. What's
and
what's what's you said it's sort of been slower getting started than you were hoping. Like what's been sort of like if you had to pick a thing that's been like missing in terms of not like in outside of you, but like inside of you, inside of like your behaviors like that. Like it's been a
oh,
missing.
I think for me, it's just I expected everything to kind of progress faster. I expected the traffic and the feedback and all that kind of stuff more. Whereas I'm happy with how things are progressing and I'm learning so much about the online world. And I would love to do this even as a career, like something like you do, where you speak to people, talk about your own experiences, and help change some people's lives. I don't, I, when I started, my goal was to change one person's life with what I've learned, right? There's people going through what I've gone through and I've overcome it. And there's people that need to, or even if it's one person's going through the exact same thing and they need to hear what I have to say, right? So it's
Totally.
a matter of finding those people. So
If you got 6 months now, one of my favorite quotes that I read recently, it was in Tim Ferriss's new book,
oh yeah,
Tools of Titans.
I haven't got to that one yet, but I loved 4 Hour Work Week.
It's good stuff. Tim, he's
Okay.
become a good friend. I just got to do a wrestling match with him and a new TV show, but it's a whole
No
other
way.
story. But
That's awesome.
Tim, so he has this quote that he shared with Peter Thiel. It's become like I have like favorite old quotes. It's like my favorite new quote. But Peter Thiel, he's a famous investor in like Facebook and Twitter and Uber and all this stuff. And
Okay.
he said he has had these successful investments and he has people that go and approach him for investment all the time, and he has frequently as talks to these people and then tells them that like, okay, share your goals with me for the next 10 years and then tell me why can't that happen in 6 months.
Yeah.
So for you, if you had a 10-year horizon of like your goals and you said you're 6 months in right now, what if you were able to hit those goals in the next 6 months?
Yeah. Hey.
What would it take for you to do differently than you're doing right now?
I don't know. It's kind of hard because I'm doing like like pretty much full time job and then doing this in just my spare time. So if I got to a point where I didn't have to be working all these hours and I could invest all my time into my blog, and that's kind of where I want to be at 1 year. I kind of want to get to the stage where in 1 year I'm at a point where I can significantly cut back my workload and focus it all on the blog, whether that be networking, writing, and those kind of things. So I,
So what if
I
you could do
expected
both?
sorry?
What if you could do both?
Yeah, just time, right?
Well, it's not even time, even efficiency or whatever, like whatever's that's like I just kind of like a different direction, which is fun. Like I kind of going off the autobiographical track sometimes because like I get a little
Yeah.
sick of that. But the I tell people like it's not no excuses. I am a masterful excuse maker.
I,
My excuses sound so good, I'll convince you they're actual legitimate reasons.
really? Can you elaborate that? Because that's a little bit different than what I'm used to hearing
Yeah.
from your side.
I mean, so in terms of social media or things like that, like I've said before that like digital stuff, for a long time, I went through a period of like a significant chunk of time where I wasn't really engaging at all with like more digital media stuff, right? I was only focused on like, the in-person events with like speaking engagements and all that. And, owning a gym, which all that stuff is amazing and cool. But like I talk smack about the digital side of things because I was like, oh, there's no meaningful connection there or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then clearly, like, what you said at the beginning of this, with having seen like that great big story piece and all that, like that's a BS excuse. It's not an actual reason, right? And I could give you like convincing physiological evidence as to like how oxytocin is released when you're in the presence of someone else, and having like a deeper connection with someone and all of those
Yeah.
things, even as a friendship level, not like in a romantic sense like it's typically referred to.
Yeah.
But it's like it's still a bullshit excuse
Yeah.
because I like just me saying that I don't see this connection as like social media or digital media is really my way of saying I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to compete. I'm afraid that my new friend Tim Ferriss is going to continue to kick my ass or whatever, right? That kind of thing. So it's like, and I say this in a place of love, and I believe say anything, anybody in a place of love, but your job has nothing to do with your blog and the success of
Yeah.
your blog.
Yeah.
It's only in your head.
Yeah, fair enough. One of my favorite quotes, getting on that topic, there is most people will choose uncomfortable over uncertain. And I couldn't agree more with that. And that's something that's rang so true in like all areas of my life. Fear of failure, all those kind of things, is all along the same line. Whether no matter what your obstacle you're trying to face, so many people will continue to be uncomfortable rather than be uncertain and tread into new waters for however long it takes, right?
So true, man. But I would commend you though for like doing this, right? Where it's like you're taking action and you have been for even the 6 months that you've gotten started.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe it's not gone the way that you have, but sometimes, man, sometimes it takes years and years of like
Absolutely.
grinding and beating on something, because it's like you look at the number of people who want to go and do what you're doing or do what I'm doing or whatever. There's a lot of people out there that want to go and do it, and a very small number of people that are going to go and make it.
Absolutely.
And you got a lot of people that are thinking about doing it and not that many people that are actually doing it. So having this conversation with you is freaking awesome, because it's like, I know if you stick it out for long enough and you
Absolutely.
gut it out and you continue to go and grind, and who knows, continue to go and maybe you have your job for the next 5 years while you're building this. It's like, but you're
Yeah,
continually like building and providing value and building and providing value,
absolutely.
then you'll deserve to have made it. But like right now, it's like, I mean, we like I think the curse is like the expectation that it's just gonna like happen so
Exactly.
quick.
That's exactly what it is. It's expectations and timelines. I totally agree with you. I have the passion, the experience of what I'm talking about, and the dedication, and it's something I feel so purposeful about, right? And I think in overcoming anything, like for me, in overcoming depression, anxiety, and stuff, having a purpose has made like such a difference. And for me, it's like a reason to get up in the morning. So there's no reason I'm not gonna make this happen. It's simply a matter of time, and I think that's so relatable for anyone in overcoming everything, right? Simply
And sharing
if you
that
have
place of truth, man.
sorry.
It's like what I'm learning too is like, I don't want to go and follow people like the old school motivational people of yesteryear that are more sort of like speaking in platitudes and things like, these motivational quotes or whatever. Like that's kind of the BS side of it. Like I want to go and like be associated with people that are like real legit people that are actually doing stuff and bringing stuff to the world, right? And so it's
Absolutely.
sometimes that's life experience. And I think there's a big difference between like in how you share things, right? If you share things from a place of like life experience, you're speaking from it in a totally different place about it in a totally different way. It's like, this is what I'm going through right now, compared to this is like something I read in a book.
Yeah,
Those are two
absolutely.
very different things. Like one's you've lived it, one you've read it in a book and you figured out a way to like regurgitate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's funny. Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Work Week, he talks about something called the low information diet. And I found that to be like really crucial on my path too, because I've read a few things that have changed my life. One being like How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And that book, I don't try and regurgitate it, but there's so many principles that just struck home with me. I don't try and
Totally.
regurgitate it. I try and explain how I applied those and how that has helped me. For example,
Exactly
in
my point.
your book,
Yep.
No Excuses, just the messages in that are awesome. So I stick to like four things, and above that, I don't go anywhere else, because as soon as the more I read, the more your brain is almost naturally inclined to copy without maybe even realizing it. Whereas I want to speak from my true experience without even having the potential to copy. Even
Totally. And just to play like devil's advocate with it though, for me, it's like Emerson was like a big influence in my life, Ralph Waldo Emerson. So, um, so there's a biography on him that's phenomenal.
okay,
It's called Mind and Fire.
mind on
But
fire. Write that down.
the short story is with that, like, you know, you see his journey and the path that he took, and it's a remarkable story. It's a long investment, but it's like that guy, Emerson, he read and then wrestled with concepts and read and wrote and read
Mm-hmm.
and wrote, like wrestled with these ideas. He formed so many of his own ideas through his own experience, but he's continually learning, continually teaching himself. So I get on one hand, like you said, of like having that life experience, but never. Yeah, I think what Tim means more with a low information diet is not paying attention to like the useless, mindless information of like all the just nonsense that you see like on Twitter or like on the on the news. You go and turn on the news and it's just like all the political drama or whatever, like all that stuff. Like there's a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
nonsensical noise, but
Okay.
finding like information that's good quality truth for you, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I might have phrased that wrong. I love reading and I love learning. So yeah, but I believe it's crucial to have like your core principles, your core habits, and not to overcomplicate things. Like simple is more. Whether that's lifting weights, compound lifts. I'm huge into compound lifts, and I believe like
I love it.
you always have to have those core principles in any area of your life, right?
Absolutely.
One thing
That true north.
moving on another note here, I have a theory, and I wanted to ask you what you think about it.
Yeah.
In overcoming like your personal issues and me overcoming my personal issues, and for anyone else. But anyway, my theory is here: no matter our obstacle or issue, I feel as though self pity is the single greatest disadvantage we willingly give ourselves. If you had chosen to live your life feeling sorry for yourself about the situations that you were dealt, would you be where you are right now?
No, not a chance. I mean, I think that's a great theory. And I would just add to that. I would say that like the luckiest that we could ever get is to learn what you just wrote and to really truly learn it.
Yeah.
And that too is like it's not a black or white thing, right? Like there's no end, like there's no top on top of that mountain. There's no summit on that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that you're on forever, right?
Absolutely.
It's continually to go and learn that and then learn it again and then forget it and learn it again and forget it and learn it again and sort of like chip away at like where not even question like if I'm having a form of like self-pity, but where does it actually exist?
Yeah.
And then at that point, turn it around and give it away to someone else, right? Because there are a lot of people who haven't been as fortunate as you have I have had to have the mentors that we've had in our life to even teach us that.
Absolutely. Oh, and a lot of that comes from a little bit of self. For me, that's a lot of that has come from self learning as well. I've spent years feeling pitiful for myself, whether especially, I think the biggest thing that made me feel pitiful is when I dealt with like chronic fatigue for years, and it's something I still deal with, and I have to watch my health. I have to watch what I eat. I have to like go to bed at a decent time. But I spent years feeling like pitiful for myself. I was like, man, I'm so young. I'm so tired. This is so depressing, and like but in those periods of time, I wasn't doing anything to stop the cycle. I was feeling sorry for myself, and then I was rewarding myself with immediate comforts that were just perpetuating that cycle. So,
Man, and I can tell too, like the self-awareness journey that you're on right now. I think in many ways you're, light years ahead of where I was at 23. And it's like you wouldn't have been there without that.
exactly I feel like there's a blessing in every trouble, and I don't feel like I'd be as mature as I think I am at my age if I hadn't gone through all the hardships I've faced. I don't feel like there's any person who's 24 years old that has faced what I've faced, and I'm not saying that in an egotistical sense. I mean, it was tough, and it's not something I wish to revisit, but I wouldn't take it back for anything because it's forged who I am in my life, and I think
You know, I would
what everyone needs
I
to
would
do
say
to look at themselves like.
totally. And I would be careful of like the comparison because it really doesn't matter. You know, it's like our own individual experience and how we go and relate to different things. Friends that through horrific things when they were young and like they turned out to be phenomenal human beings. And I've got friends that went through horrific things that have continued to allow that to rule their lives, and that's where they're at. So, you know, I'd be careful, wary of like the comparison there. And
Okay.
it just because it's like you never know what, you know, someone else's experiences. And like the thing is like people would look at me and see like, oh, wow, that guy's got like a huge disability. And whereas they might not look at you and be able to see that, even though
Absolutely.
from a physiological perspective, you probably have to endure things that are way harder than I've had to endure.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, you could have chosen that path, but you had the strong. I don't really know where I'm going with this. That's probably productive. But yeah, you faced your obstacles in the best way possible, and like you've made such good things happen of it, and you've changed lives. Like that's incredible, and that's kind of what I'm geared towards. I want to do the same thing with the things I've faced. And your book too, I loved it. You said, I'm just gonna paraphrase here, but I remember
Yeah.
you said when you went to a new school, I believe it was around eighth grade or something, and you people would look at you as that kid with the disabilities and stuff, and you immediately
Yeah.
just approached them and gave them no reason to picture you as anything but a normal kid. You would approach their uncertainty head on and eliminate any I'm lost for the word there, any uncertainty per se. I just thought that was
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks, brother. But I also too would say people might see that on the outside, but they don't see as a kid, especially like the tremendous amount of fear that I faced on the inside, you know, and
Absolutely.
doing where it's like, you know, I think it was Mark Twain that said, you know, courage is not the absence of fear. It's like the mastery of fear. It's like going into the fear. It's leaning into that, right? Something to that effect where it's like
Absolutely.
you just deal with it in a different way. So it was definitely some scary moments for sure. I mean, there still are, right? And on top of a mountain, or like that was probably, you know, one of the most terrifying moments of my life was like asking my senior prom date out. So, you know,
Yeah.
like the fear is all relative.
Absolutely. It's actually funny. Like 10 minutes before you called me here, I heard a quote from or Tony Robinson had a 2 minute video and he was talking about fear, and he said, "You don't need to lack fear to move forward. You just got to accept that the fear is there and face it head on." And I think that's so good for like any obstacle, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
You don't have to be certain. You can still be scared. You can still be in a place that isn't positive to move forward, or you can still be in a negative place and move forward, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, man. And I think now I get most excited about moments when I'm afraid because I know that those moments when I'm afraid those are the times that I'm learning. If I can step in front of a group of 10,000 people, my heart rate doesn't go up. It's like I'm not learning there, right? I have to do something different to go and like to learn, and that's where that adaptation occurs.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm kind of on a self-improvement journey, and my goal is to like make myself uncomfortable every day. If I'm uncomfortable, I know I'm moving forward, and if I'm comfortable, I know I'm not. So if I can make myself uncomfortable every day in my 20s, I'm going to be years ahead by the time I'm 30 than
Love it, man.
majority of people that never know uncomfortable. So anyway, I know our time's running short here. I just want to ask, what's next for you? I know you did your book a decade ago or so. Have you ever thought of doing a non autobiographical or biographical? I don't know what the word is. Have you ever doing like a more
Yeah,
motivational, speaking not on your life story, but with your
I
philosophies,
definitely, yeah,
if you get what I'm saying?
totally. You know, I think it's like I look at like books as, I mean, I think for sure I want to go and have that sort of like next sort of idea of what it is. I'm glad I've waited so far because I think that like, you know, when I'm gone, if I have my niece and nephew and their kids, or if I have my kids of my own and grandkids or great grandkids I never meet, then like they would look to potentially like a book and go and see like who I was, but or at least an idea of it. Obviously, there's videos and things too, but I think that there's kind of a special thing with it, and I think I've definitely wanted to re-engage with it. Interestingly enough, we were talking about Emerson. His first book, like, which was a relatively short one, but his first real one, which was sort of the birth of like transcendentalism, was called Nature. And I think he wrote that when he was like 32 years old. And I turned 31 next month, so maybe it's time I like get back on that train.
Yeah, it might be worth it. What about podcasts or anything? I noticed on your blog it says there's podcasts, but I haven't really found any. I would love it if you got some podcasts up and running.
Yeah, I took that down recently because I originally hired a digital marketing company to go and like do the website. And that's another thing like I taught myself was like web coding recently. So I was like, I'm sick of going through the ad agency every time I want to go and change something to the site. But anyway, it's, I'm not sure where that next path is. Like so the defining, Emerson's like coming up a lot here, but the defining quote in my life was Emerson said, "Do not go where the path may lead.
Yeah.
Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And not that I'm opposed to the idea of like doing a podcast or things like that. It's like I'm more interested at this stage in my life of doing something where there is like no direct path and kind of potentially in that trail.
Okay, cool. Well, anyway, we're at 2:45 here, and we gotta get going. I'm not gonna keep you too long. I gotta go for a family day breakfast here as well.
Awesome, man.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah,
appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for the message.
You're in British Columbia. Go for it.
All right.
Here. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks for sure. Bye. See you, man.